A spotted, dust-caked bobcat kitten, dragging herself forward on her chin with a wheel far bigger than her body. Mike swung the 5-ton steel bucket around, his stomach tightening. He climbed down and kicked through the debris. It wasn't a rat. He pushed aside a chunk of drywall and his breath caught. There, lying on its side, was a kitten. But it was no ordinary tabby. Its fur was spotted, its ears tufted, and it was horribly injured. It tried to lift its head, but its front legs bled uselessly. It dragged itself a single, agonizing inch forward. Not on its paws, but on its face, its tiny chin scraping the grit. When wildlife rehabber Sarah Jessup arrived, she saw a creature that was code red bad. It was barely 2 weeks old, deathly cold, anemic, and dehydrated. She knew it was touch and go. This began a desperate race against time. But saving the bobcat's life was only the first impossible challenge. The July sun beat down on the ravaged landscape, turning the air into a shimmering soup of dust, diesel fumes, and the metallic scream of tortured steel. It was 10 a.m., and the heat was already oppressive. Mike Garrett, foreman of the demolition crew, wiped a gritty sleeve across his forehead, his eyes scanning the skeleton of what had once been a textile mill on the outskirts of Portland, Oregon. His radio crackled. "Mike, you seeing this?" Mike keyed his mic. "Seeing what, Sal?" "I'm seeing a pile of rebar that's not loading itself." "No, in your bucket." "The 350. You just dumped a load. There's something moving." Mike's stomach tightened. A stray dog? A vagrant? He swung the massive yellow cab of the excavator around, the articulated arm lowering its 5-ton steel bucket toward the fresh pile of pulverized concrete and splintered wood. He saw nothing. "You're seeing ghosts, Sal. Get back to work." "No, boss, I swear. It was in the load you scooped up, from that back corner pile." Mike cursed, climbing down from the cab. He walked over to the pile of debris he'd just been clearing, a mess of insulation, drywall, and rotted timber. He kicked at a piece of plywood. Nothing. He was about to climb back into his air-conditioned cab when a flicker of movement, impossibly small, caught his eye. It wasn't a rat. It was fur, matted with filth and something dark. He crouched, his heavy work gloves pushing aside a chunk of drywall. There, lying on its side, was a kitten. But it was no ordinary tabby. Its fur was spotted, its ears tufted with tiny black points. "Hold all work," he yelled, his voice cracking. "Sal, get me a box, now." The creature was barely breathing. It tried to lift its head, but its front legs played uselessly out to the side. It dragged itself a single, agonizing inch forward, not on its paws, but on its face, its tiny chin scraping the grit. Mike felt a weight of nausea. The bucket. He had scooped it up in the excavator bucket. He'd nearly dropped it, 5 tons of steel, onto the dump truck. He felt sick. He gently, so gently, scooped the tiny body into his gloved hands. It weighed nothing. It was cold, despite the 90-degree heat. He knew exactly who to call. His fingers, thick and calloused, fumbled with his phone. "Pinecone Ridge Sanctuary, this is Sarah." "Sarah, it's Mike Garrett, from the demo site on Route 12. We have a problem, a real bad one. It's a bobcat, a baby, and Sarah, it's hurt." Sarah Jessup lived her life by the rhythms of animal distress. She was the founder and lead rehabber at Pinecone Ridge, a sprawling, hopeful place carved into the foothills of the Cascade Mountains. Her hands were perpetually chapped, Her truck smelled of disinfectant and high-protein formula, and she hadn't had a real vacation in 8 years. She met Mike at the site's chain-link gate, the demolition equipment standing silent as a graveyard behind him. He held out a cardboard box with a grim, apologetic look. "I didn't see her, Sarah. I swear. She was in a den, I guess. In the foundation. We just scooped." Sarah looked inside. Her breath caught. This was bad. This was code red bad. The kitten was, by her estimation, no more than 2.5 weeks old. Her eyes were barely open, crusted and dull. Her spotted fur, which should have been fluffy, was plastered to her skeletal frame, and it was moving. Fleas. Hundreds of them. "She's cold," Sarah whispered, her professional calm clicking into place. She ran a practiced finger along the kitten's gums. They were white, anemic, dehydrated. "She keeps pushing with her face," Mike said, his voice thick. "Can't use her front legs." "I see that." Sarah pulled a thermal blanket from her truck's emergency kit, wrapping the tiny creature and placing it in a secure carrier on the passenger seat, the heater blasting on high. "You did the right thing calling, Mike." "Will she?" Sarah met his eyes. She never made promises she couldn't keep. "It's touch and go, Mike." "It's really, really touch and go. But we'll try. That's what we do." The drive back to the sanctuary was a race against a clock that was minutes from striking midnight. The kitten made no sound, just a faint, wet rattle with every breath. Sarah had a name for this kind of patient. The almost gone. They arrived with such a deficit, it was often a question of whether saving them was even humane. But this one, this tiny broken speck of wildness, had survived a 30-foot scoop and drop in a steel bucket. "Okay, little one," Sarah murmured, pulling into the clinic. "You provided the miracle. We'll provide the medicine." The next 2 weeks were a blur of sterile gloves, heating pads, and the acrid smell of antibiotics. Dr. Ben, the sanctuary's on-call veterinarian, informed Sarah's fears and added a few new ones. "The blood panel is a horror story, Sarah," he said, peering at the results. "She's severely anemic from the parasite and flea load. She has salmonella, which is raging. And this gut. She's got every intestinal parasite in the book. It's a miracle she was still breathing." "What about the legs?" Sarah asked. She was gently syringing a high-calorie fluid and electrolyte mix into the kitten's mouth. "No obvious breaks on the X-ray," Ben said, frowning. "Could be nerve damage from the scoop. Could be a congenital defect. Could be she's just so weak from starvation she has no muscle control. Right now, we treat the life-threatening. The legs come second." They named her Summer. It seemed a fitting tribute to the brutal day she was found. Summer's life was measured in 2-hour increments. She was too weak to suckle, so they tube-fed her. She was too weak to shiver, so she lived in an incubator. And she was a bobcat, a wild animal, which presented the single biggest challenge of all. "The protocol stands," Sarah announced to her 2 junior rehabbers, Jess and Kyle. "No talking, no cooing. She cannot associate a human voice or face with food. If she imprints, she's non-releasable before she even takes her first step." This meant one thing: the ghillie suit. It was a ridiculous garment, a full-body mesh suit covered in strips of burlap, fake leaves, and camouflage netting. It was hot, itchy, and made you look like a swamp monster. But it was essential. For weeks, Summer's only mother was a silent, shuffling bush that would appear in her incubator, gently tube feed her, clean her with a warm, damp cloth, simulating a mother's tongue, and then disappear. It was a bizarre, exhausting ballet. The physical therapy was just as strange. Sarah, draped in camouflage, would lay Summer on a soft mat and perform microscopic stretches on her inert front legs. She would gently tuck the paws underneath the kitten's chest, trying to remap the neural pathways. For the first week, it was useless. The moment Sarah let go, the legs splayed out, and Summer, in a moment of frustrating determination, would drag herself forward on her chin, leaving a small, damp smear on the mat. "She's got fight, Ben." "I'll give her that," Sarah said one night, her back aching from hunching over the incubator. "She's going to need it," Ben replied. "The salmonella isn't responding to the first-round antibiotics. We're switching to something stronger. It's going to be rough on her system." It was. Summer crashed. Her temperature plummeted. Her breathing became shallow. It was 3 a.m. Sarah, breaking protocol for a moment, picked up the tiny 400-gram body and held it against her own chest, zipping it inside her fleece jacket, skin to skin. She sat in the dark of the clinic, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator. "Don't you dare," she whispered into the darkness. "You didn't survive a 350-ton excavator to be taken out by a bacteria. You fight." She sat there for 3 hours, a human incubator, a desperate prayer on her lips. At 6 a.m., as the first light hit the clinic window, a tiny vibrating purr, more a rumor than a sound, started against her chest. Summer's temperature was up. That was the turning point. From that day, Summer fought back. The new antibiotic worked. Her parasites cleared. Her anemia slowly reversed. One morning, Jess, the junior rehabber, was on bush duty and nearly dropped the feeding syringe. "Sarah, get in here." Sarah ran in, heart pounding, expecting the worst. Jess was pointing into the enclosure. Summer was standing. She was wobbly, her front legs shaking like leaves, but she was standing, and she was hungry. With mobility came personality. With personality came the need for enrichment. "She's a bobcat," Sarah reminded the team, "but she's also a baby. She needs to learn to play." They gave her every kind of toy. Small balls, scent bags filled with herbs, a tiny log to practice balancing. But one toy, a donation from a local school drive, became her obsession. It was a stuffed llama, beige and fluffy, and nearly twice her size. Summer attacked it. She killed it, rabbit kicking it with her hind legs. She dragged it to her sleeping den. She groomed it. She slept on it. The llama was her first friend, her first comfort object in a world that had, until now, been defined by steel, pain, and medicine. By September 2021, Summer was a different creature. She was still small, still a bit clumsy, but she was a whirlwind. She graduated from the clinic ICU to the kindergarten, a large indoor-outdoor playroom designed to build muscle and instinct. She pounced on shadows, chirped at the birds outside her window, and exuded the pure, chaotic energy of a survivor. But Sarah watched her with a professional, worried eye. "She's not growing right," she told Ben. "What do you mean?" "She's tripled her weight. Look at her paws, her head. She's stunted. She should be double this size by now." They ran more tests, blood panels, genetic screens. Everything came back inconclusive. She was just small. A month later, they received another call. This time, a bobcat kitten found alone on a hiking trail, dehydrated but otherwise healthy. They named her Autumn. Autumn was the same age as Summer, but she was everything Summer was not. She was big, bold, and perfectly proportioned. They introduced the two after Autumn's quarantine. Sarah held her breath. Summer, tiny as she was, had been alone for months. Autumn bounded into the enclosure, a bumbling, oversized ball of fluff. Summer, from her perch on a log, hissed, a sound like air escaping a tiny tire. Autumn, unfazed, trotted over and booped Summer on the nose. Summer, outraged, batted her on the ear. Autumn batted back gently. Within an hour they were sleeping in a pile, curled up on the llama. The friendship was transformative. Autumn, with her robust health, seemed to challenge Summer. Summer, in turn, with her feisty spirit, taught Autumn the finer points of killing a cardboard box. They were the perfect mismatched pair. But as the months wore on, the difference became alarming. Flash forward to spring 2022. Both bobcats were 9 months old, the equivalent of wild teenagers. Autumn was a sleek 14-pound predator, her muscles coiled, her eyes sharp. She was almost ready for release. Summer was 7 pounds. Autumn was twice her height. When they wrestled, it looked like a mother playing with her kitten. "It's not just stunting, Sarah," Dr. Ben said, his brow furrowed. "Something else is wrong. Her energy is flagging. And she's not eating well." The true crisis began when they started the whole prey diet. To be released, a bobcat must be able to hunt and, just as importantly, digest wild prey, fur, bones, and all. Autumn tore into her rabbits with gusto. Summer couldn't. She would try, but then she'd walk away, distressed. She was losing weight. They brought her back to the clinic. More x-rays. This time, Ben found it. "My God," he said, tapping the glowing screen. "Look at this." Her pelvis. Sarah squinted. "It looks narrow." "It's not just narrow, it's malformed. It's a congenital defect. The passage is tiny." And suddenly, every mystery solved itself. The stunting was likely from lifelong malabsorption. The recent weight loss. "She can't digest whole prey," Sarah finished, the words tasting like ash. "The fur, the bones. It's blocking her up. It's painful." "She can't pass it," Ben confirmed. "If she eats anything other than pure, soft meat, she'll get a fatal impaction. She's been starving on and off her whole life." A heavy silence filled the room. Both knew what this meant. A bobcat that cannot eat a rabbit is a bobcat that cannot survive. The meeting in May 2022 was a formality, but it was a heartbreaking one. Sarah, Ben, and the sanctuary's board of directors. The verdict was unanimous, non-releasable. "It's not just the diet," Ben explained, his voice low. "If this is a congenital defect, we can't, in good conscience, release those genes into the wild population." Sarah felt a familiar, sharp sting behind her eyes. This was the part of the job that killed you. Their mission, their entire purpose, was to rescue, rehabilitate, and release. Anything else, even a life in the sanctuary, felt like a failure. Autumn, her healthy, normal friend, would be going back to the wild. Summer, the one who had fought so hard, was being left behind. "It's just so incredibly sad," Jess, the junior rehabber, said later, tears streaming down her face as she watched Summer playing, oblivious. Sarah put an arm around her. It is sad. It's okay to feel that. We grieve the wildlife she lost. But now, she took a deep breath. We give her the best other life we possibly can. Our mission for her just changed. She's not a rehab case anymore. Jess looked up. What is she? Sarah watched Summer pounce on her worn-out llama. She's a resident. She's home. The day Autumn was released was beautiful and sharp, the air smelling of pine and damp earth. Sarah drove her to a protected wilderness area miles from any road. She opened the crate, and Autumn, after one brief look back, bolted into the undergrowth, a ghost of tawny fur gone in an instant. It was a perfect release, a profound success. Sarah drove back to the sanctuary, her heart full but also aching. When she got to Summer's enclosure, the little bobcat was waiting. Summer's enclosure was now permanent, a large custom-built habitat with multiple levels, deep-growth forest, and a heated den. When she saw Sarah, she let out her signature sound. It wasn't a roar or even a meow. It was a chirp. A high-pitched, staccato sound that was shockingly, absurdly, like a bird. Cheer up! Cheer up! Hello, sweet girl, Sarah said, smiling. I know. It's breakfast time. Now that imprinting was no longer a concern, the ghillie suits were packed away. Summer still was and always would be a wild animal. She was not a pet, but she knew Sarah, Ben, and Jess. They were her caretakers, her staff, and she, it turned out, was the queen. Freed from the pressure of becoming wild, Summer's true personality blossomed. She was tiny, but she was mighty. She ruled her enclosure with a sassy, confident flair. The sanctuary set up a live stream camera, and Summer the Pocket Bobcat became an internet sensation. People from all over the world tuned in to watch the tiny 7-pound bobcat kill her llama, stalk butterflies, and chirp for her soft diet, a specially prepared meal of ground meat that she could easily digest. She touched lives. Sarah received emails from nursing homes, from veterans, from people stuck in hospitals, all saying that watching Summer's indomitable spirit gave them joy, that her cheerful chirping was the highlight of their day. The broken kitten from the demolition zone, the one who wasn't wild enough, had become an ambassador for her entire species, reaching more people than 1,000 wild, unseen bobcats ever could. On July 4, 2022, exactly 1 year after she was found, the team threw her a party. It was, of course, a bobcat party. No balloons, no cake. Instead, they'd built a fortress of cardboard boxes, her favorite thing to shred. They'd filled sensory enrichment bags with catnip and cinnamon. They'd frozen blood sickles, frozen broth, and hidden her favorite soft meat cupcakes all over the habitat. Sarah, Ben, and Jess stood outside the enclosure watching. Summer, her spots vibrant in the morning light, chirped at the new additions. She stalked the cardboard castle, pounced from a log, and triumphantly disemboweled a box, shredding it to confetti. She was vibrant. She was happy. She was, against all odds, alive. You know, Ben said, sipping his coffee, I was looking at her intake photos. The ones where she's on her face? Sarah asked. She'd never forget. Yeah, I looked at those, and then I look at this. This little monarch, happy as can be. You know, Sarah, I don't think this is a failure at all. Sarah watched Summer roll on her back, gleefully kicking a pine cone. The excavator, the touch-and-go nights, the agonizing decision. It all led to this. A life that was different, yes, but a life that was rich and safe and full of a love that spanned both the human and animal worlds. No, Ben, Sarah said, a slow smile spreading across her face. You're right. This isn't a failure. She turned to the camera where thousands of people were watching the party online. This, she said, is a triumph.